You keep
trying
calling
to
them
hunt down and
terrorists, but
track
isn't that hyperbolic to call them terrorists?
What is? If anything, I'm understating the severity of the situation. What issue was more central in 2024 than turning back the border invasion? And since the day we came in, ICE officers have been subjected to a nonstop campaign of physical violence and harassment every single day. And outside the Portland field office in particular, every night. What's the purpose? To use actual physical violence to change the result of the election, to say you cannot turn back the border invasion. We shouldn't have to take all of the FBI, DEA, and ATF agents out of their desks, off their jobs, not prosecuting and pursuing cases of urgent national security because the Portland police won't respond, the Chicago police won't respond. It is domestic terrorism, it is insurrection, and no amount of insane hyperventilating lies from Pritzker or Johnson or any other Democratic official will change our minds on that. ICE officers should not have to live in fear and violence to do their jobs, period.
Secretary Kristi Noem notes that Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson and Illinois Governor Pritzker, they're doing everything in their power to shelter and protect criminal illegal alien gangbangers, murderers, violent anarchists. The Chicago mayor just reaffirmed his allegiance to criminal illegal aliens with his pathetic ICE-free zones declaration. Fortunately for the innocent citizens of Chicago, the Trump administration doesn't protect criminals. We arrest them. So again, a lot of this language impeding, harboring insurrection, right? The administration is laying the groundwork for the Insurrection Act to be triggered as made necessary by the insurrectionists for statutes like this. 8 U.S.C. 1324, bringing in and harboring certain aliens. Let's take a look at this. Any person who knows that someone is an alien, brings or attempts to bring to the United States. All right, we're looking for harboring here. Where is harboring? Here we go. It's subchapter 3 here. Starting with any person who, knowing or in reckless disregard of the fact that an alien has come to, entered, or remains in the United States in violation of law, who conceals, harbors, or shields from detection, or attempts to conceal, harbor, or shield from detection such alien in any place, including any building or any means of transportation. And of course, what does a harbor mean? It means providing shelter. It means providing housing, food, medical care, cash, employment, education. That's what harboring is. What are the punishments for that? Where the offense is done for commercial advantage or private financial gain, that's a 10-year felony. Pretty serious. But most of these government officials, probably, unless they're taking bribes as well, are not doing that. If they're violating that provision and they're not doing it for personal financial gain, then it's a 5-year felony. But look at this. What if they're harboring an illegal migrant and that illegal migrant causes serious bodily injury to an American, like a drunk driving crash, like a grape, like a battery, like an armed robbery? Well, now that's good for the person, not the illegal alien who committed the crime. That's a separate offense. The person who harbored that illegal alien is now looking at 20 years in prison. And what if that illegal alien who was harmed kills somebody, kills an American citizen? Well, then the person who harbored can be punished by death, execution. How many times have we heard these stories of these illegal migrants causing the death? It doesn't even have to be a murder. It could be a drunk driving homicide, resulting in the death of an American. Countless times, right? Scores, hundreds. Every one of those deaths caused by an illegal migrant who's been harbored, and of course they all have by somebody in the U.S. They're not living in the woods. Every one of those cases raises the prospect of execution for the person who did the harboring. I'm not making this stuff up, folks. That's what the law actually says.
There isn't actually a threat that these demonstrators are going to overthrow the government. Are you concerned that that response weakens your legal argument?
No, they are actually, as we speak, trying to overthrow the core law enforcement function of the federal government. Boris, this is, I think, where we're talking past each other. When ICE officers have to street battle against Antifa, hand-to-hand combat every night to come and go from their building, when they try to exit in a vehicle, when they are swarmed and surrounded and they try to tip the vehicle over, when people bring weapons to an ICE facility to try to engage in direct violent assault against ICE officers, what is the purpose? It is to prevent Immigration and Customs Enforcement from carrying out the mission the American people elected them to do. Their objective is to make it impossible for ICE to carry out ICE enforcement. When in our history have we tolerated unlawful riotous assemblies night after night around FBI buildings or ATF buildings or DEA buildings? This is the textbook definition of domestic terrorism, using the actual and imminent threat of violence to keep federal officials from doing their jobs. And unless we send in troops and resources, then we will continue to bleed federal law enforcement resources in these street battles. It's absurd, it's unconstitutional, and must be put down.
You cited Title 10 a moment ago, and under that statute, you need either a foreign invasion, a domestic rebellion, or a disturbance that inhibits the ability for law enforcement to carry out federal law. But ICE is still conducting operations.
This is how stupid this guy is. He actually misread that statute in a way that's more favorable for Stephen Miller. He read it as inhibits the ability of the federal government to carry out the law. I think that's a proper reading of the statute, but that's not actually what the statute says. The statute says the president can call out the militia if he's unable to carry out federal law. And the way some of these federal judges have been interpreting that is, if Trump makes 100 efforts to carry out federal law and 99 of them are obstructed by insurrectionists, but he's able to do it once, that one time means, well, he's able to carry out federal law. I would argue the reverse is true. If the federal government is prevented, impeded even once from carrying out federal law, then he can activate the militia. There's no number of impeding federal authority that's acceptable. But this guy actually said that it interferes with. Well, of course they're interfering with. They're blockading. They're besieging this ICE facility for more than 100 days. They're obviously inhibiting the ability of ICE to execute immigration law.
Like the facility hasn't been overrun. It seems like local officials are fairly in control of the operation if ICE is still able to execute its mission, is it not?
Do you have any idea how much of ICE's workforce and resources have had to be reprioritized? How much of the Joint Terrorism Task Force's resources have had to be reprioritized to fight these domestic terrorists? Do you have any idea how many resources are spent
you keep
trying
calling
to
them
hunt down and
terrorists, but
track
isn't that hyperbolic to call them terrorists?
What is? If anything, I'm understating the severity of the situation. What issue was more central in 2024 than turning back the border invasion? And since the day we came in, ICE officers have been subjected to a nonstop campaign of physical violence and harassment every single day. And outside the Portland field office in particular, every night, they come, they assemble, they fight, they try to impede movement, they physically attack.
And again, impeding is a separate federal felony. Let me pull that one up just to share it with all of you because I keep it handy as well. So it's a real statute. That's why he keeps saying the word impeding, because it's a federal felony. Assaulting, resisting, or impeding certain officers. That's not happening every day outside the ICE facility in Portland and elsewhere around the country. Of course it is.
What purpose? Because we had an election, Boris. We had one. What's the purpose? To use actual physical violence to change the result of the election, to say you cannot turn back the border invasion.
You make the case that these are terrorists, but in what we've seen thus far, the actual incidents of people inciting violence and not responding to law enforcement attempting to disperse them are not an open rebellion. I mean, again, you make this characterization as though they're terrorists, and I do wonder if it is potentially a problem in the future for Republicans. If a Democratic president someday calls the National Guard to a red state over what they see as open rebellion, but is what amounts to a demonstration that gets rowdy. I mean, is that not a fear?
And they're posting pictures of their kids because it's a demonstration, and they have a sniper on top of a building firing a high-caliber rifle at a ICE facility because it's a demonstration, and they are engaging in vehicle ramming.
But the National Guard isn't being sent to Texas.
Because it's a
the National Guard isn't being sent to Dallas, where that sniper was.
Because the Dallas Police Department and the governor of Texas, well, you walked right into that one, have responded to every call for assistance and help. They gave a stand-down order in Chicago, and they gave a stand-down order in Portland. Do you realize that there's 11,000 federal law enforcement officers in Oregon? That's larger than the size of the FBI. Local and state police are resourced to deal with this kind of riotous assembly.
They've been arresting folks on the ground. They were refute what you're saying outright.
They arrest them and release them.
We literally have the 911 audio of the stand-down order in Chicago, and we have documented inside of DHS every single unresponded to 911 call over the recent weeks and months. Let me present you with a counterfactual. And I know you're doing your best to try to be even-handed here, but think about this for a second. Joe Biden let 15, 20 million illegal aliens into the country. Pick your number. It doesn't matter for the purpose of this. What do you think would have happened if anti-migration demonstrators had assembled outside of every Border Patrol and ICE facility for year after year, physically attacking every ICE officer and border agent who is releasing illegal aliens, physically attacking the immigration lawyers representing illegal aliens, physically attacking the personnel at DHS, setting migrants free by the millions into our country? What do you think would have happened? You think that the response would have been measured? You think it would have been light? They would have had the military in every single facility protecting these federal officers. We shouldn't have to take all of the FBI, DEA, and ATF agents out of their desks, off their jobs, not prosecuting and pursuing cases of urgent national security because the Portland police won't respond, the Chicago police won't respond. The numbers that we need can only come from the National Guard. ICE officers should not have to live in constant fear of death. You say that I'm not using the right term. What would you describe? An organized campaign of violence, fear, intimidation, and doxing, including attacks by sniper, attacks by vehicle ramming. What would you call that, whose sole aim and objective is to disable the functions of an entire federal law enforcement agency, if not domestic terrorism? What other term would apply?
Do you have evidence that this campaign is coordinated? Are you planning charges on anyone who is actually coordinating said campaign?
Yes. So since the joint terror...
Yes, I have a couple tabs on that for the bonus show. The heat is ramping up, too, on going after the infrastructure of the logistics behind these violent, progressive fascist Antifa demonstrations. These people are paid. Their command and control staff are paid. People on the ground, the sergeants in the mob. You can see them if you watch the video. They're not throwing stuff. They're not directly engaging with ICE. They're going around whispering to people. All these people, they're who are being preferentially grabbed by ICE and hauled into the buildings like the sacks of human trash that they are. And left-wing progressive financiers of Antifa, I don't know if you've seen the headlines, they're beginning to self-deport themselves. They're beginning to uproot themselves from America. And they're making announcements on X. They're saying, well, now that Antifa has been designated a terrorist organization by the federal government, I'm going to take myself and my family to France for a year, to Spain for a year, to try to escape the jurisdiction of the United States. That's not going to work, man. We got extradition treaties with all those countries. You have to go someplace pretty unpleasant to escape extradition to the United States. But that's what they're doing. So yes, the fear of the logistics, the supporters, especially the financiers of all this, is heightening because Trump's turning up the heat.
Terrorism task force has gotten involved. We found that there are common funding, that there is common financing, that there are meeting points, that is carefully orchestrated,
as actual
it is carefully
terrorism.
integrated. Yes.
And you are going to charge someone with terrorism.
Well, so I would like to.
I bet you would like to, but that doesn't mean you're going to. Are you?
No. What I'm saying to you is the Congress has statutes on seditious conspiracy, on insurrection, on impeding federal law enforcement. The domestic terrorism statute in Congress obviously needs to be strengthened for domestic terrorism in Congress. We have foreign terrorism charges. We have an entire patchwork of federal laws. To the extent that there are charges that apply, we will charge them in every single case.
By the way, it is interesting because our foreign terrorism laws are much stiffer and provide for a lot more options for investigation and law enforcement than the domestic terrorism laws, which kind of makes sense. But now think about, as I mentioned a moment ago, all these Antifa financiers are relocating overseas. Well, if they're making phone calls, if they're continuing their efforts from overseas, now they are foreign terrorists. Maybe they're not making the most prudent decisions.
You have impeding law enforcement, you have seditious conspiracy, you have a conspiracy to the private rights, you have assault against law enforcement officers. But all of this meets the hallmark, textbook definitions of domestic terrorism. I just want Boris, I just want you, just for a moment, to step back and think about what we're talking about here. President Trump ran and won a campaign on turning back the border invasion.
You've said
you
that
have the mayor
several
of
times,
Chicago.
Stephen. We have a limited amount of time, so let me ask you. We're set to hear from J.B. Pritzker in just moments. He says that you're attempting to inflame tensions and create a war zone. He also says that you are profiling, that you're targeting black and brown people, even those who turn out to be here legally. What's your response?
Well, first of all, the black people in Chicago are thrilled that we're getting the illegal aliens out of their communities who are stealing their housing, jobs, and resources. You've seen the video of the town halls during the Biden administration where black citizens who are natives of Chicago were begging to have the illegals taken out of their country. What they've done is they've created a system of law in Chicago, in Illinois, where illegal aliens have far more rights than American citizens. If an American citizen, for example, commits a crime of sexual predation against a child, they'll cooperate with the FBI. If an illegal alien commits a crime of sexual predation against a child, that illegal alien will be shielded in an ICE no-go zone. I ask you the question, what is the right term to describe a local official declaring a no-go zone for ICE? Would you tolerate it for FBI, ATF, DEA? No, you would not. But there is an effort to delegitimize the core function of the federal government of enforcing our immigration laws and our sovereignty. It is domestic terrorism, it is insurrection, and no amount of insane hyperventilating lies from Pritzker or Johnson or any other Democratic official will change our minds on that. ICE officers should not have to live in fear and violence to do their jobs, period.
So on the substance of the question, is it the case that, as Pritzker frames it, you are profiling brown people, that this immigration crackdown is designed to go after people of color?
It's such a, oh, what a dumb question. The illegal aliens who are here are taking jobs away from blacks, they're taking jobs away from whites, they're taking jobs away from Latinos, they're taking their health benefits away, they're taking their school slots away, and of course in many cases they're committing heinous crimes. We cannot have a system of law in this country that privileges illegal aliens over American citizens, and that's what they're doing. You know it, and I know it.
So that's not exactly a no, Stephen. Can you just unequivocally state that the immigration policy... I said
it's a dumb question. Okay.
Well, I appreciate
no,
that, but
and it's a dumb question.
So no, this policy is not designed
I thought when I said it was a dumb question, it meant no.
Well, I just want to be clear and precise. I appreciate you trying to qualify my questions, but nevertheless, I think it's a fair one that a lot of people have.
My full answer is no, that is a lie, and it's a dumb question. But you said something else baked into the premise of one of your questions. You said, well, aren't we provoking? Illinois governor says we're provoking actions that are unlawful. Why would the mere presence, just think about this for a second, if I put federal law enforcement and National Guard into a nice sleepy southern town, is anyone going to riot? Is anyone going to try to shoot them in the face?
Well,
Are they going
if someone
try to
goes
attack them in the
into a
street?
building
They would say,
full of people in the middle of the night covering their faces without identification, without identifying themselves, there might be concern among the community, especially if American citizens are being, especially if American citizens are caught up in that, which some reportedly were.
We netted over 30 foreign terrorists who are members of Train
and American citizens also wound up apprehended in that.
They torture women and children. Those American citizens are now safe from Train to Aragua. You know, there was a case recently in Washington State.
But isn't that enough reason for some people to demonstrate and say that they disagree with that policy?
They took a power drill.
Isn't it enough for some people?
Well, by the way,
hey, Stephen,
first of all, let me finish the story. TVA took a power drill and drilled a hole through a woman's hand.
Understood.
Through her hand.
We have to leave the conversation there because we're short on time, but nevertheless, we do appreciate you making the time for us and coming on CNN and sharing your point of view.
I'm sure he appreciates it.